Hello, I'm Mark Hess, and I'm the president of Colorado Association for Gifted and Talented, and I'm pleased to introduce Meghan Bonde. Meghan is a Tedx speaker and the founder of intensityhub.com. She supports gifted, creating, and neurodivergent entrepreneurs and leaders to understand their intensities and amplify their impact, lead change in their families, organizations, and communities. She's facilitated learning for thousands of leaders globally with a focus on learning and equity. Meghan is a lifelong learner who fosters growth in individuals and organizations alike, and she's most proud of her leadership successes as a neurodivergent self-advocate and within her exceptional family. Tonight, I would like to welcome Meghan for navigating the TEDx journey as a gifted entrepreneur, and thank you for being with us.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to share.
Yeah, we're excited too.
Okay, so I'd love to start off with my why for deciding to become a TEDx speaker and really discovering my rainforest mind and the traits about my giftedness as an adult just a few years ago really changed everything. I was going through the quiz on the rainforestmind.com, Paula Prober's website, and it was just speaking to me. Yes, I'm complex and multi-layered and intense and misunderstood and colorful and creative and passionate and perfectionistic and all of these traits. And it finally just felt like a relief that there wasn't anything wrong with me, that this was just how I was wired, and that I could just really understand myself and really see everything through that lens of being differently wired and having my rainforest mind. And once I discovered that, I just love to share my learning with others. When I get excited about something that I've learned and it's supportive of me, I just want to share it with as many people as possible. I get very excited, and so that led me to the TEDx stage as the obvious choice for sharing out about my learnings. And really, this was at a transitional point in my life of really experiencing gifted kid burnout, which I think has over 370 million views on social media. And I was experiencing that as an adult. I was an educational leader working in a middle school. And one example of something that just exhausted me, I was walking down the hallway in front of the lockers, and one of the sixth grade students who I had really just come to know and love, he just had an infectious smile. He was amazing at hip hop dancing. And unfortunately, he made frequent visits to the office right across from my area as the social emotional learning specialist for getting kicked out of class. And he had gotten in trouble at lunch this time. The adults reported he wouldn't give up his stereo and was playing music and was being defiant and dangerous. And a few minutes later was taken out into a police car and put in the back of the car. And I was just so upset to see a neurodivergent student treated this way. I was just bawling with tears when I shared how I disagreed with this response to what had happened and how it escalated, and just came home just with no energy for my kids, my husband, myself. Just would collapse on my bed with nothing left. And so I really knew at that point I needed a change for myself. And so it led me to become self-employed and try a new career path for myself, making a difference in a different way. And I like to just jump right in when I'm doing something. And so I figure, well, a TEDx talk will be a great way to sort of announce who I am and share my idea and really share this transformational learning with others in this new journey as an entrepreneur. And so, it was at the point of a career transition, and I wanted people to know about the traits of giftedness beyond IQ that I had discovered that there were so many just myths and misconceptions that I thought and that I was taught that were really untrue. And part of my reason for getting started was I'm an activist. I have a strong sense of fairness, and I was really connecting giftedness with the neurodiversity movement and really seeing this as being differently wired and falling under that neurodivergent umbrella of sort of outside what society sees as typical for how someone sort of thinks and perceives the world or functions. And I was really excited about a platform where I could really get my message out to a lot of people. And so the TEDx was scary, but more exciting than scary. So I decided to go for it. So for about 6 months, I worked on applications. I joined a coaching program to get some help with really refining my idea and learning how to apply. And so I went to multiple full day intensive trainings to learn about how to have a really clear and effective application and to get guidance on writing a talk that would really share the idea in a clear and concise way with the audience. And then I was able to join small group calls to be able to practice my different drafts and get feedback and just have that accountability of being able to turn in things and get feedback. That was actually one of the times when I got the most constructive feedback in my career, all through school and as an educational leader. I had often just heard, you're doing great, you're excelling, you're a high achiever. And I wasn't used to getting a lot of feedback of, no, do it this way, try this, this wasn't effective. And it was really good for me. It was an awesome growing and learning opportunity to be able to say, this is actually normal and a part of learning, and I'm getting challenged and I'm hearing ideas that's going to help me, and I don't know what I'm doing with this type of talk, even though maybe I've done lots of professional development and training for teachers and educators and at conferences. This is a different type of talk, so it was really great learning experience for me. Um, the questions that they were helping guide me is like, I really needed to have one idea. So TEDx is not about motivational speeches or just sharing information. It's about having an idea worth sharing, is sort of their tagline. And so it really needs to be a solution to a problem and something that's unique. And so really refining and getting clear about what is the idea that I have, who is it for, and then on the application to be able to share my speaking experience and be confident in what I did have working as an educational leader and sharing a call to action to be able to move people to do something with the information and the idea that I was sharing. So the coaches that were helping me were really encouraging me to apply to everything, to not worry about the location, if I was ready to do this, to be willing to travel, and that I was going to get rejection because there's so many applications that are turned in. And it had nothing to do with if my idea was good or not, or if I was qualified. It was everything to do with, is this really fitting with what the organizer is looking for in terms of the variety that they're wanting, or themes, or the event that they're putting together. And so I was even told that many people, maybe the average was about 87 applications to get invited to a TEDx talk from all of the people in the coaching program. I ended up submitting 30 applications and started getting invitations. It started off with interviews. And so I did one interview and got invited and decided to decline the first one. There was something that I was concerned about in terms of the ethics that they were asking me to do that I knew went against the TEDx rules. So I kept applying. And then in July, I got invited to two within a week of each other. And both of the events were really close together. And it's just such a big time commitment. And so I had already accepted the first one in Woodinville, which is near Seattle, Washington. And so I declined the other one that was actually located in Colorado, where I'm from. Um, but even with the interviews, there was 125 interviews for 20 spots with hundreds of applications. So it's just really competitive to get in and get invited. And it's about volume to be able to make it happen, along with a good idea. So then July of 2023, I started engaging in all of the support that my organizer was offering for the TEDx Woodinville event. There were 20 of us speakers, and she offered master classes to really dig into our talk writing. She had a format that she wanted us to follow, some techniques to share for memorization. So continued to just do a lot of learning and growing in that cohort of speakers. We had deadlines throughout the fall to turn in drafts. She wanted a really tight talk. The theme of the event was to the point. And so it was so hard to get it short. I can talk for, hours about topics that I'm interested in, and I see everything as interconnected and can bring in so many different views. And so to really get it down to 7 minutes, which is what she was asking for, even though TEDx has a cutoff of 18 minutes for the talks, she was encouraging us to do about 7-minute talks to have really concise talks that were to the point with the key components of the format that she was looking for. And then we just had a lot of practice as we put together the talk. We had pods that we created with each other to be able to meet in smaller groups and give our talks to each other, get feedback about our delivery, and be able to reflect on any adjustments that we wanted to make, and then just get it memorized. Um, so I was going to weekly talk practices with my coaching program and just getting lots of delivery and content feedback to really be able to deliver my message. And just building connections with people. I got to build relationships and give and receive support from the other speakers. And many of them, even though they might not identify, I would also say showed a lot of traits of having a rainforest mind. So I just really felt like I had found a tribe of people that were like-minded, excited about sharing their messages with the world in going through the program. And as I was putting together the talk, it went from a very broad idea of be yourself, be authentic. And then I started to think, now I want to bring in neurodiversity and speak to neurodivergent people. And it took me a little while to be able to get my the application for this one and be ready to focus just on giftedness, because I was really through the process transforming and working through my own misconceptions and biases around the term gifted and what it meant, and my fears about what other people would think about me when I shared this information. So I was able to move through a lot of that anxiety and really end up with a talk that really spoke from my soul about what I wanted to share and what would have been helpful for me to know right away and earlier in my life about how my brain works. So during the talk writing, it did go in so many different directions. and I bounced around with different target audiences. Like maybe I want to speak to managers and leaders of schools or organizations about gifted employees and meeting their needs at work, because that was something that I was going through of not having my needs met at work when I went through my burnout. Maybe I was going to speak to other gifted adults or gifted parents. I'm not really sure. And I just want to share this with everybody because you know gifted people in your life, even if you're not. But I did end up choosing the target audience of other gifted adults. And we really learned a structure about taking the audience on an emotional journey. And it reflected somewhat the hero's journey to be able to, really get to know me as a person at the beginning, and then share a challenge and a pain point through a story, and take the steps of how I discovered my idea and solution that I'm sharing with the world, and that solves the problem, and really land in a main point of the key idea and have that be the common thread and a call to action to really close it out. So just going through that writing process was really amazing for me. It was a lot of emotional work and brain power, with all of the edits and feedback and video recording myself to share my drafts with my organizer and my other speaker peers, meeting all of those deadlines. But it was really, really an amazing experience. Then we flew to Seattle and had the dress rehearsal at the Wagner Performing Arts Center, and got to test out standing on the red dot and hear ourselves with the microphone sound system, and really just get ourselves in the mindset and prepared the day before. And then a bump that I had was, I always love how Paula Prober talks about how there might be chainsaws that try to cut down your rainforest mind. And somebody came up to me the day before my talk, which is all about understanding the gifted traits and really embracing them and the intensities, and said, well, I have a friend who does research, and she found that when gifted kids hear their label and know about it, they do worse off than kids who don't get labeled. And it scared me. And I was able to move through it and really just stand in my knowing of this is my truth and my experience, that having language to describe my identity and then understanding what it actually meant, and working through those myths and misconceptions, it supported me. And so even if there is a research study that says that it was negatively impacted people's mental health to know that they're gifted or get labeled like that, for me, that's not true. And so I'm going to speak my truth. So that was really awesome. This is not actually at the TEDx event, but I recreated it with my photographer because I love to dance to two particular songs before I go on to a speaking gig. And so this is me listening to Unstoppable, and then This Is Me. And those are like my anthems to really get me pumped up before I'm doing something exciting and nerve-wracking. And so I definitely did that on stage or backstage in the green room, which was like a gym in the Wagner Performing Arts Center, before it was my turn to go on. And everybody, all the other speakers kind of knew me, that I loved to dance, leading up to it. And I talk about that in my talk, as loving to dance. So that's me doing my pregame ritual. And then we weren't allowed to take pictures on the actual event, but we did some photo ops of speaking during the dress rehearsal. So here I am in my flow giving my talk, even though it's technically at the dress rehearsal. But it was just, I hardly remember it. I didn't think while I was doing it. It just kind of came out of me while I was sort of blinded by the lights on stage, in the big theater. They only allowed 100 tickets for the audience based on the license that the organizer got. So the theater wasn't even full. People were pretty spread out with the 100 people that were able to come for the live event. But it went great. I felt like I had prepared well and gotten great support and really gone on the journey to be ready for when the main event happened. And so this was last October of 2023 when I gave the talk, and it's still not available on YouTube or the TEDx platform, the TED platform. And really, there's a long process, and it can be shorter or longer depending on the situation. But it takes time for 20 speakers' videos to get edited. We had 4 videographers, so there was just a lot of footage to go through to be able to put together the 20 different talks. Then once those are completed and we all have finalized our descriptions and our titles, our bios, the organizer can upload that onto the TED platform, which is supposed to happen really soon because the video editor just finalized everything recently. Then we have another waiting game for just the TED organization to do their fact checking and anything on their end before they actually get released and are available to view. So hopefully this fall it will be available just depending on the timeline of how that goes. But I think a lot of people don't realize that it can be, you know, a long time after the live event for it to actually get posted. And so in the meantime, I'm just enjoying doing more speaking. I got to share a little bit about my TEDx journey as an adult with overexcitabilities at the Dabrowski Congress this summer. I love going on podcasts and sharing at conferences or summits and webinars to be able to just share my journey and how transformative it was for me to really share my story and put myself out there in a vulnerable way to be able to let other people know that they're not alone and that they can embrace their unique differences. So thank you so much for taking the time to learn more about the TEDx journey. And it's just been a thrilling part of my entrepreneurial path as I create a career that really is for the way that I'm wired.
Thank you, Megan. And I'm seeing some hearts come up and reactions here on Facebook too. And if you have questions, if you've joined us live and you have some questions for Megan and post them in the comments, I'll try to pluck those out of there. Um, I've been doing gifted education for a long time, right? For more than 2 decades. And I'm often speaking to an audience that I know is like-minded. And so I don't often think about like that level of vulnerability that would have taken for you to stand up on stage and talk about being a gifted adult and talk about, and I want to see your talk now because now I need to hear what you have to say and probably talk about being a gifted kid too. And you were talking about that process where you had to pare it down to like, who's my audience going to be? What is my specific message? And I'm just curious, like, is there like a single thing that made you just finally say, yeah, I'm going to do this. I'm going to take the risk and I'm going to stand up there and do this? Is there a single thing you can pinpoint?
I really had to think about what was my unique message to share with the world. And being a gifted adult is something that has carried shame that I've been hiding, that I wasn't sure if
Mm,
it was okay
mm,
to say that word or share it or what do I do with this? And am I too much? Do I talk too much? Do I go too deep?
mm,
And all of these things and all of the work that I really did to sort of shift out of being in burnout mode started from that self-awareness. and started from that acceptance and celebration, looking at my differences from a strength-based lens. And I think often people don't group it into, it's the very similar journey to someone who maybe identifies as ADHD or autistic or bipolar or any other neurodivergent identity. And a lot of those identities are often seen by the medical model as deficit, whereas gifted is kind of automatically assumed that it's all good and easy. So it's different from that, but it's really the same thing because when you have those misconceptions, you grow up thinking, oh, there's something that's wrong with me or too
Mhm.
much about me. And so that that was really, I just connected with my mission and my purpose of like, I want to make a difference for other people. This has been transformative for me. I want my kids to know that their giftedness is not
Mhm.
a disorder or a problem. I want other late identified adults to know. I'm hearing so many parents get sort of start to identify once their kids get identified, since the school systems are getting better about identification, and I just cared about making that impact.
Yeah, I can see that people are relating to what you said. I think one word that you used was really powerful for me, and it was when you said shame. And if you were to say, do you think there's shame in being a gifted learner? I think most people would say, what are you talking about? That doesn't, no, there's not. But there is sometimes that feeling like, oh, I shouldn't even be talking about this. And say, thank you so much for doing those talks. I think it's so important that we talk very openly with our kids about what it means to be a gifted learner. And the friend of the researcher you ran into was also running into a lot of gifted children who never learn what giftedness is all about. And I've come to think over the years that that's probably the most important thing we can do in as educators is start to talk about what that means. Anyway, I'm sorry, I'm getting on to a little
I
bit of
love
a
it.
yeah, you know what that's like. Okay, so there's my rainforest mind going right there.
Yep.
But as mentioning rainforest mind, um, Paula Prover, that's Paula Prover. Love Paula. Love the Dabrowski podcast. You mentioned some of the people I really love in the field. Are there any other like resources that you can think of, like just right? I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot that helped you along your journey to understanding giftedness.
I So I started before really digging into Elena Aguilar's work around coaching for
Mhm.
equity.
Yeah.
And as
Mhm.
a leader in education and wanting to really have a focus around transformational coaching and equity, I went through Elena Aguilar's coaching program and membership. And a big focus on that is understanding your own identity and your
Mhm.
own lens
Yeah.
and helping other people understand their identity. And interestingly enough, neurodivergence and giftedness was not really a focus and often isn't a focus. But I had really done a lot of thinking and learning around race and ethnicity, around socioeconomic status, around sexism, around the queer community, just being passionate about social justice.
Mhm.
And that was such a foundation for me to make the shift to wait a minute, I need to include myself in my fight for
Mhm.
social justice.
Yeah.
I have to advocate for myself and my own needs and leverage my own strengths. This is a way to be a disruptor of systems of oppression, is to advocate for myself and take care of myself as I'm a leader. And so that really, Elena Aguilar's work really provided a great foundation for me, even though it wasn't specific to giftedness as a leader.
Uh, you know, you're helping me realize and understand the importance of when we talk to gifted kids about giftedness that, and I've always tried to um, help them find their 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 tribe, their group in other gifted kids. But you're helping me realize too that we want them to hear from gifted adults because you've been on that journey. You see some of the end of that journey and the other side down the road and over the hill and over the horizon that gifted kids don't see yet. And so I'm this is one of those talks that I'm going to point my colleagues toward and say, listen to Meghan and listen to what she has to say. And I also want gifted kids to hear and see your description of the application process that you went through, that the many, many applications and the rejections and the on the 87 average is the 87 applications, or was it interviews? 87 applications to find a
Application.
spot.
Yeah.
I want gifted kids to hear this, to hear that. And so maybe we'll have some classrooms joining you when your TEDx is published. Maybe we could get some classrooms to join and see that. But I want them to see this presentation too, very
Thank
much.
you.
And so, and no, thank you. And thank you so much for joining us tonight. And we gave you longer than 7 minutes, and I'm so glad that we did. And so I'm so glad that we found each other in this. So thank you again. I'm just going to add a couple announcements here at the end. And so this is my way of saying, okay, don't forget to stop the recording, which I'm about to do.